As it was in our reading, this was a special day. After Jesus spoke with his disciples, after Zacchaeus, the tax collector, came to faith, he continued towards Jerusalem. After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, coming up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethphage at the hill called Mount of Olives, he sent out 2 of his disciples, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you. As you enter it, you will find a colt tied, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, why are you untying it? Say, the Lord needs it." What is happening? It seems like Jesus is setting something up. He's orchestrating something. Now, were there no other donkeys anywhere else that he had to send his disciples to this specific village? Or how did he set it up? Did the owners of this donkey know about this in advance? They must have. Either Jesus himself set it up in advance, saying that one day I will send you 2 disciples if they ask for it. Let them give them the donkey. Or maybe spiritually, as we see in the book of Acts many times, God speaks to people through dreams and visions. Maybe God revealed to them that if you see these 2 people asking for your donkey, give it to them. But why? Like, how would you feel if you got up one morning, you leave your house, and you see somebody's trying to take your car? It's the same thing. And the guy said to you, the Lord needs it. What would you do? You'd say, go ahead? No. You would call the cops really fast. So there is something happening here. Jesus is setting something up. And there is a reason for it. Now let's continue reading and we will find out. Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, the owners asked, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." And they brought it to Jesus. They threw their cloaks on the colt and put Jesus on it. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. And then, when he came near the place where the road goes down to Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices and thanking God for all the miracles, saying, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest." Now, we know from the other Gospels that they were taking branches from the trees, putting it on the floor. So they're basically taking all their jackets, putting it on the donkey, laying it on the ground, so that his donkey's feet will not touch the ground. That is the highest form of respect you could show somebody. They did that to conquering kings coming home and certain people that they deemed deity back then. But this is what I want you to notice. There is something different that's happening today. Because until now, Jesus never allowed them to treat him this way. Never received accolades, acclamation to this point. Do you remember the instance when they wanted to make him king after he did miracles? They said, this is the guy. He just ran away from there. He didn't want them to make him king. Starting from his first miracle that's written in the book of John, during the wedding in Cana, when he turned water into wine, his mother came to him. She said, "They're out of wine." And Jesus said, "Why are you telling me this? Why are you telling me this? And he said, my time has not yet come. His brothers later on, sawing his miracles, they said, why don't you go do all these things in Jerusalem? Why are you hiding in these hills? Let everybody see the power you have. My time has not yet come. Performing so many miracles, healing people, opening the eyes of blind, giving sight, giving hearing, cleansing the lepers. What does he say? Don't tell anyone. Don't let people know. Most of the time they don't listen, except for a couple of times where he said, go show yourself to the priest. There was a reason for that. But today is different. It's a different day. He's making a point which they should have understood. Point which that was foretold them 500 years ago. Now we're going to geek out a little bit. So the reason Jesus is making this point on this day starts in the book of Daniel, chapter 9. Now, Daniel saw a vision. He's confused. He doesn't know what it means. He's been praying and fasting for God to tell him what it means. And then God sends him Gabriel. And Gabriel tells him, along other things, this. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the anointed one, that's the Messiah, the ruler, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. God, through Daniel, is telling everybody who's listening, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. What does that mean? That means, I did the math, there will be 483 years from the day the decree goes out to rebuild Jerusalem. 483 years to the day is the day Messiah is coming. So how were they supposed to know the Messiah, who he is, and when he came? Because there were many Messiahs, people that claimed to be Messiah that came before Jesus. They weren't the one. But people needed to know who it was that was promised. They needed to know from miracles, they needed to know from teachings, and they needed to know from this day. Pharisees knew. We're going to read it soon. It was the year March 14, 445 BC. Persian king Artaxerxes gave the decree to Nehemiah to rebuild Jerusalem. Now, there was a decree given earlier by Cyrus, but that was for the temple. This was for Jerusalem. That's the key some people miss sometimes. So, March 14, 445 BC, countdown began. You have to count 483 years from that day. Do you know what day Jesus went into Jerusalem on a donkey? Just like it was prophesied in Zechariah 9:9. Rejoice, daughter of Zion. Your king comes to you, lowly, riding a donkey, on a colt of a donkey. That was also prophesied before. Jesus went into Jerusalem on that day, April 6, 32 AD. Exactly 486 years later. That day was special, that they had to prove to everyone that Jesus was the promised one. And his disciples were rejoicing. They were happy. They said, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord." They recognized him. His disciples did. There were crowds that joined them. Then later on, they turned their back. But that's also because they didn't read the rest of the predictions. Because in Daniel, it says, Messiah is going to be killed. That's a different issue for another day. And they were praising him. Peace in heaven, glory in the highest. And some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." They understood what they were saying. Pharisees understood and knew that he was claiming to be the Messiah, doing what he's doing. They didn't want to accept it. The disciples knew, but they wanted to shut him up. But what did Jesus say? "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." Why? This is a special day. This is the day that was prophesied. This is the day you've been waiting for. You can shut everybody up, but you can't stop this. And they will not shut up, because this is the day. The day. As he approached Jerusalem, he saw the city and he wept and said, "If you, even you, had known on this day what would bring you peace." A lot of times, we don't know what brings us peace. We think we do. We go after things. We try to make things happen, thinking that it will bring us peace. It will bring us blessing and give us what we want. Unless it's done the Lord's way, it will not bring us peace. It will not bring us blessings. If you had known, but it is hidden from your eyes, the days will come when your enemies will build an embankment against you and encircle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the day of your visitation. This day was not like any other day. It was a trigger of the Holy Week, what we call Holy Week, of a chain of events that was going to change eternity forever. But they had to recognize it. They had to understand it. They had to be expecting it. On this day, some of you have not come to that point yet. You didn't take that step in faith yet. You didn't fully surrender your life to him yet. This is the day. This day is the day that's going to bring you peace. Some of you, you've been a believer for a while, or you grew up in faith. All this, you're thinking, I've heard this before. check to see where you are, especially you guys that grew up in the faith. Especially the rest of us that's been walking with the Lord for a long time. Check to see where we are. Am I truly surrendered? How do I know that? I know it by doing things the way He says. Am I following the Lord in His commands? Or am I trying to achieve things in my own understanding and my own abilities? With a bunch of wishful thinkings, hoping that God is going to approve it. Step back if that's you. Stop all those endeavors. Step back, surrender, and give it to the Lord. Lord, here I am. I want to do things your way. I surrender to you. What does it mean to surrender to God? It means to allow Him to make the decisions in your life. And how does He do that? Well, He does it through the teachings. He says, do it this way, don't do it the other way. That's step number one. If your decision, your plans, what you want to do is against what the Lord's principles and teachings are, you're not following Him. If it's not bothering you that you're not following Him, you're in a very dangerous place. I urge you, please, immediately step back. Take spiritual inventory. Realize how much the world and the flesh has affected you, and step back. Wash yourself. You can confess. You can repent. You can be renewed. But that's only done when you surrender. That's only done when you stop your endeavors, your engineering, your manipulations, your struggle, the travail of our soul. Stop it. Step back. Say, Lord, here it is. I surrender. I'm not going to try to make this relationship happen. I'm not going to try to make that job happen. I'm not going to try to force myself into this company or that job or the other direction. I'm not going to go into this much debt to buy that house that I think everybody's going to love. I'm not going to go into all this kind of debt to get that certain car that I think is cool. Step back. Say, Lord, here I am. What do you want me to do? Show me. He's showing you. Most of it is here, guys. Most of it is in the Word. Surrender to His ways. Go and take time to pray and fast and read the Scriptures. Have Him show you where He wants you to go. Because this day is important. They missed it. They wanted Him to be a different kind of a Messiah. They wanted Him to free them from Romans. But Jesus came to free them from their sins. They didn't want to hear the parts where Messiah had to be killed and had to suffer. They didn't want to read those parts. To a certain extent, they still don't read those parts. They're still waiting for Him to come because they're trying to fit God in their own understanding and their own image. Now, before we get ugly with people, this happens in the church too. We write our expectation, and then we say, God, We want you to be this way. But God clearly said in His Word, that's not how I work. You will be the freest when you surrender to me. You will be victorious when you surrender to God. It doesn't make worldly sense, but it makes heavenly sense. They will not leave one stone on another because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you. So I'd like to end with this. Is this a day that you need to recognize to make certain decisions? Is this a day where you have to make difficult decisions? Have you been going down the wrong way? Investing your time, like I said to the young group, wasting our spiritual capital and time on things that are not from the Lord. Depends how far down the road you are, but the sooner you cut your losses and come back to the Lord and do things His way, more profitable it will be for you. We are all guilty of this at a certain level. We all fail at this. The most successful life, the most fulfilled life, the abundant life, only comes from Him when we do things His way. Everything else is a waste of time. Everything else, it just takes life away from us, time away from us, feelings away from us, resources away from us. And it doesn't fulfill. It's always missing something. It's always incomplete. It's always leaking. It never satisfies. Only doing things God's way will complete us. And that starts with a decision. If you're not a believer, take that step now. Today is the day of your visitation. If you're a believer, take inventory now. Take it seriously. You see what Jesus warned Jerusalem about? He said, you didn't recognize it. Because of that, all these things are going to happen to you. I wonder how much happens to us because we don't recognize the time of our visitation. I pray that we all will. God bless you.